Jesus departed from there and came to his native place, accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astonished. They said, "Where did this man get all this? What kind of wisdom has been given him? What mighty deeds are wrought at his hands? Is he not the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James and Joses and Judas and Simon? Are not his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his native place, and among his own kin, and in his own house." So he was not able to perform any mighty deeds there, apart from curing a few sick people by laying his hands on them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. Hello and welcome to Closer Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad that you're with us today. He was amazed at their lack of faith. In his own home, in his own family, in his own native place, people didn't accept him. Familiarity at times brings contempt and doesn't allow us to recognize what's in our midst. How many times have parents let their children go to another child's house for an overnight? Next day they go to pick up their child and the mother said, "Oh, your little boy, your little girl." They were so wonderful. They were so precious and so polite. And they picked up their dishes. They ate everything on their plate. And they had such good manners. "Yes, ma'am," and "No, ma'am," and "Thank you." And the mother stands there and says, "Do I have the right child? He doesn't do it at home. How come he does it over here?" And I think it's a reminder of all of us that sometimes within our midst, we take for granted the people that we love the most. We don't really appreciate them while they're with us. And we would say things, and I love this. People come to confession, man or woman, and say, "Oh God, I get so upset, and I'm so impatient, and I say this, say that, carry on with my husband, with my wife, with my children. They drive me crazy." And I always ask them, I say, "Well, you know what? Who do you love more than anybody else?" "Well, my husband, my wife, my children. I mean, that's the most important thing in the world to me." "Who are you the toughest on?" "My husband, my wife, my children." And sometimes we forget to realize that when you love somebody, you want the very best for them. And we didn't understand that as children. We thought our parents were terrible. They wouldn't let us go to this. We never had what all the other kids had. We always had something to complain about. That's what kids do. And that was fine. Growing up, my parents really didn't care whether or not I liked them. They really didn't care whether or not I appreciated them. But they made darn sure that if I didn't listen to them, there were going to be consequences. My mom and dad didn't want to be my best friend. I had a new best friend every couple months, right, as most kids do. I was going to be their parent, whether I liked it or not. And boy, that famous question every kid comes up with, "Why?" Because I said so, that's why. And if you don't do it, you're not going to go through all that. That idea that familiarity breeds contempt, and we don't always take time to appreciate and to love the people who do the most for us. And when we have the inability to recognize the people who love us the most, who care for us the most, who do the most for us, those are the ones that we need to appreciate. I look back and, all these kids that I wanted to hang out with, and it was so important, and I didn't dare want to be around my parents. I wanted to be with my friends and everything like that. That didn't follow me through life. They didn't do anything to care for me through life. They weren't there when I got sick or when I was well or when I was down or when I was up. The people who love you the most are the people who are there. And you know what? If you get upset with your kids and you punish them and you yell at them, good for you. Good for you. Kids need parents. Kids need limits. Kids need to know how to respect authority. They need to do it. When I was a kid, and I laugh about this, I said, I really thought about being a nun rather than a priest, because I spent most afternoons after school in the convent doing punish work, okay? But, the reality was, if I got punished at school, if I could avoid telling my parents about it and get away with it, I would never go home and say, Mom, guess what? I got punished for whatever. Because whatever punishment the nuns gave out to me, that was going to be mild compared to what Mom and Dad did to me. The punishment at school was going to be the easy part. The punishment at home, they were going to make me pay for it. Why am I talking about all this with this gospel? Because within our own native place, we are the least appreciative. Within our own native place, we're the most blind. We don't recognize and realize what's going on in our midst. And our Lord, who grew up here, I changed that boy's diapers. How can he know all the stuff he knows? He can't do it. That sort of thing is something that was going on, and they failed to recognize in their midst. And consequently, they failed to have faith. They failed to have faith in the Son of God because they felt like, well, I've known him all his life. He can't be the Son of God. I've heard about all that stuff, but I'm not bringing my kid to him. He used to play with my kids out in the street. He can't do any of that stuff. And I think it's very, very important in our own lives that we start to recognize in our midst. One of the things that, as a priest at funerals, and sometimes I'm not very pastoral. I've visited this old lady every couple of weeks in the funeral home. No one ever comes see her. No one ever, takes her out. No one ever brings her flowers. No one ever takes her home for Mother's Day. And then I go to the funeral and I see one of her kids, tearing it up and boo-hooing and carrying on. Oh, Mom, if I could just tell you one more time that I love you. She only lived 85 years, stupid. What took you so long? I mean, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for people who take advantage of people who love them and care for them and do for them. And rather than growing up and showing gratitude, they simply grow up and ask, what's next? Who's going to give it to me next? Who's going to help me next? Who's going to, they never stop to live lives of gratitude for what they have. One of the real gifts that I consider in my own family is my family's been blessed with longevity. My dad lived to be 93, And my mother's still living at the age of 95. And I have aunts and uncles who are in their 90s. And of course, we all grew up very, very close. And we still get a chance to tell them that we love them. We still get a chance to do for them because they did for us for so many years. And I'm very, very proud that I grew up in a family that was taught gratitude, and we've never lost gratitude. You know, I laugh with my mom when my dad died. About a month later, I was sitting with her and I said, I don't know if I'm doing this right. I've never buried a daddy before. But I said I really hadn't cried. I'm happy for my dad. He had gotten to the point he had no more good options left in this life. And he was a man of great faith. I'm happy for him. And when that time comes with my mom, I'll be happy for her. Wonderful life. And myself and my 4 siblings, we know how blessed we are. We know what a wonderful family we have. And myself, my brothers, my sisters, my cousins, we all take time to show gratitude for what we've been given. And that ability to be mindful and grateful for what is something that unfortunately you don't see enough of today. You don't see enough people being very, very humble and very grateful for what they've been given. And this idea of our Lord in his native place being rejected is familiarity within a family should breed gratitude and not rejection. So when our Lord makes a statement that he was upset because the people lacked faith, I think it's only in faith that we come to see what God has provided for us. It's only in faith that we come to understand that. And, you know, the big buzzword nowadays is I came from a dysfunctional family. Nobody was raised by the perfect family. No one had the perfect parents. No one had the perfect children. But when you've got someone who loves you enough to teach you, who loves you enough to stop you, who loves you enough to let you know how important faith is in life, you've been blessed. You've been tremendously blessed. And our Lord, in his own place, they did not realize the blessing that they had in the person of our Lord. When we start to realize our blessings and we have gratitude rather than more wants, then our faith is strengthened. Then we understand. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment. Hi, I'm Father Jeff Bayou from Closer Walk Catholic Communications. Thank you for being here today, and a special thanks for the support that you give us. First of all, your prayerful support we so desperately need, and also your financial support. We are donor-driven, and that is what keeps us on the air today. As you well know, the truth is in great demand and in very short supply, and mainstream media is not going to bring you the truth of the Gospels of our Lord Jesus Christ because that's not socially acceptable and it's not politically correct. Certainly we all realize that when this life journey's over, we don't stand before the Supreme Court, we stand before the throne of God. Therefore, with great clarity and great charity, to pronounce the truth of the gospel is important. Your prayers, your financial support enables us to do that. So we thank you, and may God bring you closer in your walk with the Lord each day. God bless you. He was amazed at their lack of faith. Hello and welcome back to Closer Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad that you can join us. This program is being filmed during the 4th of July week and celebration. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, I would like to take the second portion of this program and talk to you as a priest who was born and raised in the United States and is now wondering in what country I'm living. When the founders of our country said that all men are created equal, I agree with you. Notice the founders did not say all men are born equal. They said created equal. Our creation begins before we're born. And they ensured those rights to all created human beings. Now, I am very, very sure that we have a history in this country where not all people were seen as equal. We talk about the 400 years of the African slave trade. It was terrible. We actually paid for human beings the way people paid for cattle. One of the things I think is very, very important is the buyers of these slaves were predominantly white, not entirely white. I think it's important to understand that the sellers of these slaves were Native Africans. They made money off their own people's backs. And those who bought them brought them to this country and made money off their backs. And we became known as a country of immigrants. It's no secret that many immigrants were not welcome, were not wanted. You need not look very far to see the signs that say Irish need not apply, Italians not welcome. You go in 1891 and see the wholesale massacre of Sicilians, and it won with government approval, the wholesale massacre of Sicilians. Many, many immigrant groups, although they came there on their own, they were treated very, very unfairly. Then we can go to the internment in World War II of Japanese Americans. We can look at the treatment of Native Americans. That's a very shameful part of our history that many Americans have suffered. And even though they served their country with great distinction, many of them had to suffer to be Americans. We live in a country now that the narrative is only the descendants of slaves have suffered. And we talk about reparation. I'm all in favor of reparation for slavery. Not reparation for slavery from 7 generations ago of people who were slaves and 6 generations ago of people who owned slaves. I'd like to have the reparation of the slavery of the 48 million people who today are currently enslaved. In the year 2021, and our so-called woke and enlightened society, we have more slaves in the world today than we had in the 400 years of the African slave trade combined. We have people sold into labor trafficking, but 89% of those 48 million are sold into human trafficking. And the human trafficking is the sex trade. We've got people all over this country who are being enslaved. And guess who's enslaving them? In this country, it's primarily individuals. It can be a boyfriend, it can be, here it's not really organized crimes. In Albania, Romania, it's organized crimes. Not here. It's individuals. We had an instance where we had a 17-year-old senior in high school trafficking 2 freshman girls in our state. They had made the mistake of thinking that he was enamored with them. So they, as kids do, they take pictures of their privates and send it to him. And when that happened, he owned them, or else everyone at school was going to see their private business. He started trafficking kids. We live in a world where, in a country where we're supposed to be created equal. We currently have an administration in the White House that has done more to kill unborn babies than anyone else. Why? Do you not realize how many of these unborn children are minorities? And we're talking about institutional racism. If anyone thinks that we're going to ever live in a world where everybody loves everybody and everybody thinks that we're going to all be treated equal, it's not going to happen. We're only equal in the sight of God. We're only precious in the sight of God. Would I love for hatred and prejudice to end? Yes. But there's always a new group. Now we live in a country where Asian Americans are being attacked. Most of them are being attacked by other minorities. Isn't that interesting? Why is that happening? Well, it's the pecking order. It's the pecking order of who you're going to hate next. There's something in our flawed human nature that allows us to think that that's okay or to think that's justified. We also live in a country where the law of God is no longer seen as having any value. A couple months ago in a House debate on the transgender issue, a young congressman from Florida, freshman congressman, gave a very beautiful debate and talking about divine law and natural law and how gender reassignment contravenes that, and that, you know, it's not up to us to tinker with divine and natural law. And after he finished, a senior congressman from New York stood up and said, "The honorable congressman from Florida, you need to understand what we do here in the House has nothing to do with God's law or natural law. Thank you. We're one nation under God. Everybody's worried about the future of this country, but they've segmented their fears. How's it going to impact Asian Americans? How's it going to affect Latin Americans? We're all Americans, and if we're going to save this country, the law of God has got to become tolerated again. We no longer have free speech. If you take the scriptures and you talk about the scriptures, and if the scriptures contradict anything that our new woke society is proclaiming, then you're taken off Facebook, Twitter, whatever social media platform. They don't want to hear that. If you criticize the wrong woke political leaders, then your free speech is denied you. You can take certain incidents, like that incident with what we do here in the Congress has nothing to do with God's law, divine law. That will never be reported in mainstream media because it doesn't go along with the narrative that thinks that to remain faithful to God means you're un-American. And we have the responsibility. We have the responsibility as Americans to continue to involve ourselves in the process and continue to choose leaders that are going to be faithful to the law of God and not try to contravene it because of any new social agenda. That's the flavor of the day. Happy 4th of July. Thank you for being with us. May God bring you closer each day in your walk with the Lord. Hi, I'm Father Jeff Baye from Closer Walk Catholic Communications. Thank you for being here today, and a special thanks for the support that you give us. First of all, your prayerful support we so desperately need, and also your financial support. We are donor-driven, and that is what keeps us on the air today. As you well know, the truth is in great demand and in very short supply, and mainstream media is not going to bring you the truth of the Gospels of our Lord Jesus Christ because that's not socially acceptable and it's not politically correct. Certainly we all realize that when this life journey's over, we don't stand before the Supreme Court, we stand before the throne of God. Therefore, with great clarity and great charity, to pronounce the truth of the gospel is important. Your prayers, your financial support enables us to do that. So we thank you, and may God bring you closer in your walk with the Lord each day. God bless you.